Thank you for staying with us for the session, Understanding the Role of the Adjuster. Our panelists for this morning are Ms. Annette McPhee, President of Prudential Loss Adjusters Limited, and Mr. Godfrey Bethell, Executive Director of MCG Adjusters Limited. Ms. McPhee has over 20 years of experience in the insurance industry, having worked with one of our larger general insurance companies, and now serves as a public adjuster. Mr. Bethell, having previously worked for one of our larger general insurance companies, has been in the insurance industry for nearly 20 years and is now an independent adjuster. During this segment, we will discuss the role of the adjuster and how what they do can be pivotal to the claims handling process within the insurance industry. Also, we will discuss some of the information that policyholders should be aware of when making a claim for a loss. So we will begin with you, Ms. McPhee. What is an insurance adjuster, and are there different types of claims adjusters?
Good morning, Carl. Good morning, Bahamas. Yes, an insurance adjuster is a professional who investigates, negotiates, and settles claims. And there are adjusters in insurance companies they call claims handlers. And then we have adjusters who are intermediaries, and Mr. Bethell will explain that further, who work outside of the insurance company. I'm a public adjuster, and I mediate between the policyholder or the claimants and the insurance company. I assist them in gathering evidence for their claims and presenting it to the insurance company, where I negotiate and settle claims on their behalf.
Thank you. And Mr. Bethell, please elaborate on the role of the independent adjuster in the insurance industry.
The role of the independent adjuster is similar to that of a public adjuster. The difference being that our services are retained by an insurance company. We are licensed and regulated by the Insurance Commission, and it is to those insurance companies also licensed and regulated by the Commission to whom we can offer our services, and not the general public.
All right, thank you. So what type of qualification and training does an adjuster typically require before they can be licensed?
The licensing requirements are outlined on the Insurance Commission's website, but at the minimum, it requires an advanced diploma in loss adjusting from the Chartered Institute of Loss Adjusters in the UK, or an equivalent qualification from a body approved by the Commission, in addition to 3 years relevant work experience in the field.
Mr. Bethell, are adjusters only needed after major natural disasters, or do adjusters assess other types of losses?
Adjusters assess all types and classes of claims. It's important to understand that a hurricane is one of many perils insured under the policy. So an independent adjuster would be retained in the event of a loss, such as a fire, a burst pipe, a theft, so on and so forth. So, it's just not the hurricane that may affect many policyholders at one time. There are individual losses that we get involved with from time to time.
And Ms. McPhee, oftentimes we think about the hurricane season and the losses being so much, but are adjusters hired only for claims exceeding a certain amount, or you can adjust any claim?
All right. So further to what Godfrey has said, there are a number of perils that are insured under the policy. From my end, as a public adjuster, I also deal with claimants who may not necessarily be policyholders, but who are claiming under the policyholder's insurance. For example, in the event of personal injuries arising from motor accidents or slip and fall. So yes, adjusters deal with numerous types of claims. Typically speaking, adjusters are retained for moderate to large claims. But again, from my perspective, where I deal with a lot of persons in the public, we have persons who approach us for assistance with small claims that are under $5,000. We sometimes encourage them to deal directly with the insurance companies because these claims are pretty much straightforward to handle. But there are some persons who, maybe because of time and other reasons, prefer just to have someone mediate on their behalf, even with the small claims. So yes, adjusters handle small as well as large claims.
All right, thank you. Oftentimes we only hear this term during the months of June through November. And as a policyholder, sometimes we ask, what is underinsurance? Why is my insurer telling me that I'm underinsured? So, Mr. Bethell, what does underinsurance mean?
So underinsurance is a term used to describe a situation in property insurance where the amount of insurance is not sufficient to replace the thing or the property that's being insured. So generally speaking, most insurance companies consider you to be underinsured if the value of the insurance is less than 90% of the property insured. So to give you an example, Carl, if you own a home that's really worth $100,000 and you insure it for $80,000, you would be considered underinsured because the sum insured only represents 80% of the value of your building. So when you have a loss, let's say you have a $10,000 fire claim, you would recover 80% of that, or $8,000, leaving you $2,000 out of pocket. So underinsurance becomes a relevant consideration at the claims point. So it's important for policyholders to routinely check their sums insured, get an appraisal every so often, consult a quantity surveyor to ensure that at all times they are adequately insured, that they keep pace with the rising cost of construction, changes in tax structure, and particularly if you make any improvements or extensions to your property, the impact of underinsurance could be felt if you don't go into your agent and insurer to amend the value of the insurance.
All right, thank you. And Ms. McPhee, I know in terms of underinsurance, Mr. Bethell used the house example, but does underinsurance come up in any other form of peril?
No, mainly with the property insurance. Sometimes with a motor vehicle, most insurers would say that they would settle based on the market value. So in that instance, you may have an instance where the vehicle may be insured for a certain amount, but the market value and the way it's kept and mileage and everything may not reflect what the sum insured is. And so in that instance, the insurer will settle the claim based on the market value. But primarily, underinsurance is written in the property policy, and it's very, very important for persons to understand this concept, because oftentimes you find that the policyholder is unhappy with the offer being made by the insurance company, and they're like, they only want to offer me so much. But when you underinsure your property, what you're actually doing is accepting a part of the risk for yourself. So for example, like Mr. Bethell said, if your property is valued at $100,000 and you insure it for $80,000 and you need $100,000 to replace it completely, then you will be considered your own insurer for the difference. And so I would encourage persons to ensure that their contents and their homes are adequately insured for the total replacement value. And like Godfrey said, you have to take into consideration tax structure. One time ago, we didn't have VAT. Then it was 7.5, and now it's 12%. You have to take into consideration, even now, the rising cost of building materials. And so it's very, very important for persons to ensure that their property is properly insured. And what I would like to say is that persons may express that, insurance is very costly, but I would want to say that there are means of making your premiums, whether through the bank or making installment payments with your agent. So there are avenues that are in place to assist persons as best as they can to ensure that their property is adequately insured.
Yeah, and we want to make sure that our virtual audience understands that it's important that they are not faced with this term underinsurance, especially during the season of hurricanes and natural disasters. When the settlement of a claim is outsourced to an independent adjuster, what notice is given to the policyholder?
In the first instance, the policyholder will receive notice of the involvement of an independent adjuster from the insurance company or the staff adjuster. So that person will receive the initial details regarding the claim, and they will be told to expect a call from an independent adjuster. From there, upon receiving instructions from the insurance company, the independent adjuster would make contact with the policyholder by phone, by email, by WhatsApp, regarding our involvement and to explain the claims process and the next steps.
I find that is important because sometimes you hear about someone showing up at a client's house or a policyholder's house, and sometimes they're not given notice. But I'm glad that there's a process in place.
Yes.
And if you feel as if you're not, as a policyholder, not given the right information, you should contact your insurer, I imagine, correct?
Yes, you should. And as I previously stated, an independent adjuster is not permitted to solicit from the general public. So our instructions always comes from the insurance company. And an independent adjuster should always give that courtesy of notice to the policyholder explaining why they're involved and how the claims process will unfold.
Okay. So Ms. McPhee, what guarantee is given to the insurer to make certain that a claim submitted by the public adjuster is fairly settled and not unreasonably priced?
That's a very good question, Kyle. Sometimes you find that the claimants approach the public adjusters with high expectations. They demand what they want in settlement, but the settlement isn't based on what the public adjuster wants or what the client wants. We're guided by the material evidence. And so the guarantee that insurers have that we present a claim that is reasonably outlined is that we are guided as professionals. We are obligated to abide by certain codes of ethics. And so while we want to achieve the best settlement offer possible for our clients, we have to be guided by the fact that our presentation is fairly and reasonably presented to the insurer, and that we're not bordering on fraud. And I found that once the claim is properly and detailed and outlined, you would have no problem reaching a settlement offer, because oftentimes, too, if the settlement offer is totally unreasonable, that would create a deadlock in the negotiation process.
All right, so the Code of Ethics, and Ms. McPhee made a good point in terms of Code of Ethics. Despite having the title independent adjuster, public adjuster, I imagine the Code of Ethics remains the same for all adjusters, correct?
Yes, indeed. So the idea is to ascertain what reasonably is covered and the value of that damage. And I believe once both parties stick to the Code of Ethics and be reasonably minded, there's always middle ground to be achieved.
Exactly. And so, Ms. McPhee, last question. If a policyholder does not agree with the insurer's assessment of damages, what can a policyholder do?
Okay, if a policyholder doesn't agree with the offer being made, the first thing that they can do is retain a public adjuster. And we can come into the process, I'll just say this, we come into the process either at the inception of the claim or after they would have been made an offer by the insurance company. Once we have done our independent work and we've presented that claim to the insurance company, if there's still a dispute over the amount of the settlement, the policy allows for arbitration, as Madam President, if there's still a dispute regarding the settlement figure, the policy, as Mrs. Fields has outlined, allows for arbitration. And so that matter can be brought to arbitration. And then if a settlement still isn't reached after arbitration, then you can resort to litigation, which is a lengthy and costly process. But we try to take all measures possible to make sure that the offer is fair and reasonable.
I think it's important to know when you brought up the arbitration process, then those rules are important so that policyholders understand that there is only a dispute on the difference, not necessarily the entire amount. It's only on the disputed difference between what they believe they should receive versus what is being offered. So that is the disputed amount that will be in the arbitration process.
Right. And then also, again, it goes back to the issue of underinsurance, because sometimes the dispute may be one of underinsurance. And so once a claim occurs, the insurance company is guided by the insurance contract, the terms and the conditions of the contract, what is on the proposal form. And so sometimes persons may feel as though they're unsatisfied for whatever reason, but when you look at the way the claim has been adjusted in accordance with the terms and the conditions of that policy, you know, they may not have a very strong case, I'll put it that way. And so that is very important, yes.
All right, thank you. So we're in this hurricane season, June through November. The adjuster's role is always heightened during this season. Any last words that you'd like to tell our virtual audience in terms of what to do in preparation for themselves and if they need to use an adjuster? I know you're an independent adjuster, but in terms of what they should do during the season to make sure that they are secured in their assets and their protection of their assets.
Well, the policy, most property policies require that a policyholder maintains their property in a good state of repair. So that would be the first bit of advice. Secondly, at the beginning of the hurricane season, review your sum insured. Make sure it's adequate. The third bit of advice is consider those things that are not insured, such as contents or personal effects. Sometimes you may want to upgrade the cover on your vehicle. So consider what you have insured, is it adequate, and what's not insured that I may consider getting a bit of coverage for.
And Ms. McPhee, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, further to what Godfrey has said, we are in the hurricane season, and it's important to note that once a tropical storm is named, you cannot make any adjustments to your policy. And so now is the time to review your policy, see whether or not it's adequate, because once the Met Office names a tropical storm, you cannot just take out coverage, and you cannot increase coverage. So now is the time to get prepared. The other thing I would want to advise is that be mindful of alternative accommodations. The normal policy would cover you for alternative accommodations in the event of a peril like fire or water, a burst pipe. But in the event of hurricane, you have to take out that extra coverage, which comes at a cost, but it is worth it. And so my example would be to you, my suggestion to the general public is to really consider taking out hurricane insurance. I know that these are tough economical times, but there are avenues and ways in which you can meet your premium. Like I said, the banks can assist with premium payment, or you can speak with your agent regarding installment payments. But in closing, I would say, consider it, because if your home is valued at $100,000 and is totally destroyed, do you have $100,000 saved somewhere that you can replace your home, as opposed to maybe paying $2,000, $2,500 in installments to make sure that you have coverage? So that is my suggestion to the general public.
Thank you. Both awesome advice, I think, for our virtual audience. We thank you for being a panelist today. And of course, we have questions that will come from our live chat. And once we have those questions, our panelists will be free to answer those questions as best as they can.
Yeah.
All right?
Thank you again.
Thank you.